Most people have been laughed at for being too slow. Too slow to decide. Too slow to act. Too slow to keep up. And that laughter leaves a mark that stays long after the moment is gone. But what if the ones who laughed were wrong? What if being slow was not the weakness, but the one thing that would matter most when everything else fell apart? Today I want to tell you the story of Kian, a young man who was told his whole life that slow meant broken, and the moment that proved every single one of them wrong. This is a story about patience, about the kind of strength that does not look like strength, not at first. About a young man who learned that the pace of a life does not decide the worth of it. Stay with me until the end, because the ending of Kian's story will change the way you think about your own pace, and the pace of everyone around you. The village of Tambara sat between two dry hills on the edge of a wide open plain. It was small and unhurried by the standards of the world. But even there, life moved fast. Farmers rose before light. Merchants pushed through the market by mid-morning. Children ran errands before the heat of the day arrived. In Tambara, to be slow was to be noticed, and not in any kind way. Kian was 24 years old. He was average in build, not tall, not broad, not striking in any way that made people look twice. He had short black hair and medium brown skin, and a face that stayed quiet even when the world around him was loud. He wore a simple gray tunic and loose brown trousers, both dusty from the fields. His sandals were thin and worn at the soles. When he walked slowly. When he spoke slowly. When he worked, his hands moved at their own careful pace. He had always been this way, and he had spent most of his life wishing he was not. Every morning, Kian went to the community well before starting his day. By the time he arrived, most of the others had already filled their jugs and left. He lowered the bucket carefully. He pulled it up hand over hand without rushing. 3 young men stood at the side of the path watching. One of them, a lean and loud young man named Baro, called out with a grin, "Kian is still at the well. The rest of us have already eaten, already worked, and are now resting." The others laughed. Kian said nothing. He lifted his full jug and carried it home. It was never just the well. At the market, traders moved past him before he finished counting his coins. In the fields, younger boys completed their rows while he was still at the midway point. Even his mother, a gentle woman who loved him deeply, had once placed a hand on his shoulder and said softly, "Kian, my son, I wish the world moved more kindly for a person like you." He had heard things like that for as long as he could remember. And somewhere inside him, he had begun to believe them. On the far eastern edge of Tambara, near the bend in the river, there lived an old man named Elder Juma. He was 79 years old. His white beard fell softly to his chest. His face was deeply lined, not from hardship alone, but from long years of paying careful attention to the world. He wore simple, faded brown robes and carried a long, carved walking stick of pale yellow wood. Most mornings he sat beneath a wide acacia tree near the water, watching the river. He never sought attention, but people who were carrying something heavy often found their way to him. One evening, Kian walked to the river with no purpose. He simply needed to be away from the sound of the village. He found Elder Juma sitting there, as he always was. Kian sat nearby without speaking. For a long time, neither of them said a word. Then the old man spoke without looking at him. "Tell me what you hear." Kian listened. Near the bank, water rushed and crashed over a row of jutting rocks, white and loud and fast. Further out, the river moved in a wide, dark current, smooth, deep, silent. "The rushing water," Kian said. "It is the loudest." Juma nodded slowly. "Yes, but which water travels further by morning?" Kian had no answer. He looked at the river for a long time. The shallow water near the bank crashed loudly over the rocks and broke apart. It scattered. It disappeared into foam and noise, but the deep current further out kept moving, steady, quiet, unhurried. It had been moving long before they arrived. It would be moving long after they left. Elder Juma said nothing more that evening. He let the river finish what he had started. And for the first time in his life, Kian did not feel that his slowness was a crack in his nature. He began to wonder if it was the depth of it. The next morning, Kian woke before the sun. He went to the small garden behind his home and began turning the soil. Slowly, carefully, row by row. He had tended this garden for years, but never truly believed it was worth anything. Now he worked it differently. He worked it the way the deep current moved. Without urgency, without noise, but without stopping. He planted. He watered. He returned the next day and did it again. Weeks passed. Then a heavy rain came. It swept through Tambara in one night and flooded the lower paths. When Kian went to his garden the next morning, a large section of what he had grown lay flattened in the mud. Weeks of patient work, ruined in a single night. He stood at the edge and looked at the damage for a long time. His first thought was simple and heavy. What is the point? A slow man could not build anything strong enough to survive. He went back inside and sat in the dark for the rest of that morning. When Kian returned a few days later to replant, Baro passed by with two others. Still trying, Baro called out, a grin spreading across his face. A fast man would have covered the garden before the rain. But you probably thought about it slowly and missed the moment entirely. The others laughed. Kian kept his hands in the soil. He did not look up. He did not argue. But something in him tightened, not with anger, but with a quiet and steady purpose he had not felt before. Months passed. Kian had rebuilt the garden rows higher this time. He had asked an old farmer which direction the water ran across the land. He had adjusted, slowly, carefully. Then a dry season came. 3 weeks without rain. The soil cracked. Other gardens wilted quickly. Kian's held longer because he had never missed a single morning of watering. Not one. But even his plants began to fail. He sat beside the drying earth one evening, and for the first time since the river, he felt the old doubt return. He thought of Baro's words, of his mother's sad eyes, of every person who had ever told him that his pace was not enough. He did not give up. He went back the next morning, and the morning after that. When the rains returned, many of the other gardens in Tambara were replanted in a rush. Too fast, too careless, uneven and patchy. Kian's garden had been built over a long season with no shortcuts. That harvest, it grew fuller and stronger than anything else in the village. People slowed as they passed it. Some stopped entirely and stood at the edge, looking. Even Baro stopped once. He looked at the garden for a moment. Then he walked on without a word. The garden did not announce itself. It simply grew. Then, the dry season brought something no one had planned for. A fast-moving grass fire swept in from the eastern plains with the afternoon wind. It came quickly. The village scattered. Baro and several men ran fast, grabbing things, moving in all directions, colliding with each other in the confusion. Kian had noticed the smoke early that morning during his slow walk along the northern path. He said nothing to anyone. He simply went home and quietly began guiding his family and 2 elderly neighbors out along that northern path. The long way around, away from the fire's direction. He had walked that path so many times, so slowly, that he knew every turn and every open space within it. By midday, when the fire had passed and the smoke had thinned, the people of Tambara gathered outside the village. Some had lost their goods. Some carried burns from the embers. Baro sat on the ground with his hands empty, coughing and exhausted. He had run fast. He had run in the wrong direction. Kian stood nearby with his family, and both neighbors, all of them safe, all of them calm. Baro looked at him across the gathered crowd. He did not speak. He did not laugh. Elder Juma appeared at the edge of the gathered crowd. He leaned on his pale yellow walking stick. He did not address the crowd. He looked only at Kian, and he gave one slow, deliberate nod. Kian understood it completely. The deep current had gone further. Here is what I want you to take from Kian's story. Speed is loud. It draws the eye. It gets the praise. But attention is not the same as arrival. Most people are so busy rushing that they stop noticing where they are actually going. Kian did not move fast, but Kian moved with awareness. He watched the land. He learned the paths. He paid attention to the things that faster people never had time to see. There is something deeply powerful about a person who is not rushing. A person who is not rushing is a person who is paying attention. And a person who is paying attention rarely gets truly lost. The world will tell you that slow means behind. It will tell you that slow means weak. It will laugh at the one who cannot keep up. But remember the river. The water that rushes over the rocks is the loudest thing in the valley. It is also the first to break apart. The deep current, the one flowing steady and quiet beneath, that is the one that reaches the sea. You do not need to be the fastest. You do not need to be the loudest. You only need to keep moving. Slow progress is still real progress. Every step forward is still a step closer, no matter the pace. Do not mock the slow one. And if you are the slow one, do not mock yourself. Your pace is not your punishment. It may be your greatest protection. The ones who laughed at Kian were scattered when it mattered. The one they laughed at brought people home safely. There is something in that worth sitting with, not just for Kian. For all of us, the slow river never stopped moving. Neither should you. I will be honest with you. I have been Kian. I have felt the quiet shame of watching others move ahead while I was still in the middle. What shifted for me was not learning to go faster. It was learning to trust the direction I was already walking. If you are moving, however slowly, and you are moving towards something real, that is enough. Do not let someone else's pace become the standard you hold yourself to. If this story touched something in you, I would love for you to subscribe and join Zavian Tales. This is a place for stories that help you think better, leave wiser, and grow stronger, one lesson at a time. And before you go, I invite you to watch my previous story. This week's Sparrow taught me the power of not giving up. That story will show you that what looks like weakness from the outside can be the beginning of something no one expected. Thank you for watching, and remember, keep moving.